Hello and welcome to the Daily Climate Show. Coming up today, we're in the fight of our lives and we're losing. The head of the UN pulls no punches as COP27 gets underway.
We are on a highway to climate hell with our foot still on the accelerator.
The summit hears from leaders of some of the nations most at risk from climate change, including low-lying islands whose very existence is threatened by rising sea levels. After all the fuss over whether he'd attend, Rishi Sunak is due to address the conference within the next hour, but Boris Johnson has already made his return to the international stage.
I'm the spirit of Glasgow. That's what I'm doing. I'm the spirit of Glasgow, COP26.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Climate Show, where we track the changes to our world and interrogate some of the potential solutions to the climate crisis. Now, for the next 12 days, the eyes of the world are on Sharm el-Sheikh, where the heads of state, environmentalists and business leaders will together in an attempt to build on the progress made at previous COP summits. But as COP27 got underway, at the Egyptian Red Sea resort, delegates were warned by the UN Secretary-General that the world was losing the battle against climate change and that we were instead on a highway to climate hell with our foot on the accelerator. In his opening statement, Antonio Guterres also highlighted one of the big issues of this year's summit, loss and damage. That means big polluting nations compensating smaller countries at the sharp end of climate change, something the Secretary-General described as a moral imperative. Take a look.
Those who contributed least to the climate crisis are reaping the whirlwind sown by others. And many are blindsided by impacts for which they had no warning or means of preparation. This is why I am calling for a universal early warning system coverage within 5 years. And it is why I am asking that all governments tax the windfall profits of fossil fuel companies. Let's redirect that money to people struggling with rising food and energy prices and to countries suffering loss and damage caused by the climate crisis. On addressing loss and damage, this COP must agree on a clear, time-bound roadmap reflective of the scale and urgency of the challenge. And this roadmap must deliver effective institutional arrangements for financing. Getting concrete results on loss and damage is a litmus test of the commitment of the governments to the success of COP27.
Well, one of the stars of last year's COP26 was Mia Mottley, the Prime Minister of Barbados, who warned in Glasgow that 2 degrees of global warming will constitute a death sentence for millions. Well, today she echoed Antonio Guterres' call for a windfall tax on the energy companies, which are making billions of pounds of profits.
For loss and damage to work, we believe that it can't only be an issue of asking state parties to do the right thing, although they must. But we believe that the non-state actors and the stakeholders, the oil and gas companies, and those who facilitate them need to be brought into a special convocation between now and COP28. How do companies make $200 billion in profits in the last 3 months and not expect to contribute at least 10 cents in every dollar of profit to a loss and damage fund? This is what our people expect. And I ask us, as we reflect on what a loss and damage fund can look like and who should access it, that we convene a special convocation that doesn't only involve state parties, but non-state actors such as the same companies.
Well, our climate change and energy correspondent Hannah Thomas-Peter joins us live now from the conference. Hannah, welcome. So first of all, huge emphasis this year on loss and damage to the planet.
It is the issue that provides this summit with a theme. It's also the issue that provides this summit with a deep fault line, because developing nations who have done the very least to cause the climate crisis are asking wealthy nations who have driven the climate crisis to compensate them for the damages caused. Now, for the first time ever, loss and damage is actually on the agenda at a COP. That has been welcomed by developing nations, but they are deeply sceptical that it will go further than that, despite the UN Secretary-General's call for a new climate solidarity pact and Mia Motley's call there for a brand new reparations fund. It's very unlikely, from all the discussions I've been having with climate diplomats behind the scenes, particularly with negotiators from big, wealthy nations, that there will be anything more at this summit than simply an agreement to keep talking.
Did you feel, being there was much optimism at the start of the week?
No, I think that climate change has slipped down the agenda for many countries because they've been focused on other issues, potentially even distracted. In the words of Alok Sharma and John Kerry, the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres is known for using strong language. The language is getting more and more robust as he goes through his tenure as chief of the UN, and I think this was his strongest language yet, that we are on a highway to climate hell. He's really, at this point, trying to frighten nations into doing something on the political front, trying to regain some lost momentum, frankly, to ensure that particularly the big emitters, the G20 economies, do more to bring down their emissions faster, but also to ensure that those wealthy nations start to feel guilt, in essence, and to match that sense of guilt and responsibility and moral obligation with cash.
Well, after all the toing and froing about whether he'd go to Sharm, Rishi Sunak is due to address the conference, well, within the next hour.
Now, of course, this is about the future and the planet that we leave our children, but it's also about the here and now. At home, many people are grappling with very as a result of Russia's illegal war. So that just highlights the need to move quickly to improve our energy security, to transition to cheaper, safer, cleaner forms of energy. We remain committed to the 11.6 billion that we announced last year for international climate finance. And actually, today, we're seeing the benefit that that can bring to countries around the world as we help countries like Kenya, for example, transition to net zero. That actually is also bringing exciting opportunities for British companies. It's involving the private sector, which is the right thing to do, but also helping those countries transition to a cleaner future.
OK, let's go back to Hannah in Sharm. So that was Rishi Sunak, the very latest from him. He'll speak live within the next hour. Do you get a sense, Hannah, that Rishi Sunak, after that U-turn, can achieve some of the pledges that he wants to do?
I think there's going to be a degree of scepticism about Rishi Sunak's presence here. I think that's mainly actually because of the problems with the UK's position on extraction of fossil fuels. Rishi Sunak is now handing out new licences in the North Sea and considering opening a new coal mine in Cumbria. And of course Kenya will welcome that partnership, but Kenya is a polluter on a tiny, tiny scale. What really matters is what happens with the big emitters, with the most powerful economies. And the other thing that's undermining Rishi Sunak's position here at COP is that Boris Johnson has turned up and given his own speech at a different event.
I'm the spirit of Glasgow. That's what I'm doing. I'm the spirit of Glasgow, COP26. And it's incredible to think how much has changed since that last COP. And to be frank, how much damage has been done in just 1 year to our great common purpose of tackling man-made climate change.
A lament there, really, from Boris Johnson, and also a handy opportunity to capture some of the spotlight. Let's not underestimate too much the power of the United Kingdom. Remember, we were hosts of COP26. There is still some charity towards the United Kingdom. It hasn't all been squandered by Rishi Sunak's U-turn. Certainly John Kerry, the US climate envoy, and others welcoming Rishi Sunak here. We've seen President Emmanuel Macron of France giving him a kind of joyful welcome in their bilateral meeting. So this is Rishi Sunak's first trip abroad as a Prime Minister. There's a lot on his plate. right. There's a lot of damage to make up for, but he is also taking tentative steps towards regaining some of that credibility, especially when it comes to climate change.
OK, Hannah, thank you very much. That's Hannah Thomas-Peter there at Sharm el-Sheikh at the COP27 climate conference. Now, there was a bit of a mystery this morning when, despite Downing Street and Buckingham Palace's insistence that he wouldn't attend COP27, King Charles was still listed as taking part in the opening ceremony. So the UN's live feed said the ceremony would include interventions from the Egyptian president, the UN Secretary-General, King Charles and the leader of the United Arab Emirates. The other three all spoke in person, but there was no appearance, virtual or otherwise, from Charles. Buckingham Palace still insists there are no plans for the King to address COP27 by video or any other means. And just before we go, a reminder that our weekly climate show with Tom Heat, well, it's back, and you can watch it on Saturday and Sunday at 3:30 in the afternoon and again 7:30 in the evening. Well, that's all for today, but join us tomorrow at the same time for the very latest from COP27.